Every day, 20 million barrels of crude oil transit this single waterway. That accounts for 25% of all seaborne oil trade on the planet. This cargo is funneled through a tight geographic pinch point between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. At its narrowest, the passage is only 21 miles wide. This bottleneck is the global economy's most vulnerable jugular vein. Because so much energy is concentrated in such a small space, even a minor disruption here can trigger a massive shock to the international market. These deep tensions are rooted in the permanent geography of the region. Long before the discovery of oil, the strait's narrow dimensions were already dictating the rise and fall of empires. In the 1500s, the Portuguese Empire recognized that controlling this 21-mile gap meant controlling the entire trade route between India and Europe. They enforced their dominance through the Cartaz system. It was a mandatory toll. Any ship caught trading in the Gulf without Portuguese permission faced immediate confiscation or was simply sent to the bottom of the ocean. That monopoly eventually broke during the violent 1622 siege of Hormuz, when the Persian army and the English East India Company attacked the fortress. The campaign claimed the life of the famous explorer William Baffin. The fall of the Portuguese established a recurring rule for the strait. Any power that tries to monopolize or choke this waterway will eventually face the combined military weight of the world's reigning superpowers. Navigating the strait today is a complex logistical challenge. Because the water is surprisingly shallow near the coast, supertankers cannot simply sail anywhere they please. To manage the flow, ships follow a traffic separation scheme with two mandated paths, one inbound, one outbound, each 2 nautical miles wide. Because of deep water locations, these lanes force international tankers directly into the territorial waters of Iran and Oman. These tankers share the water with an agile smuggling economy. Small speedboats routinely dodge international sanctions, running electronics and livestock through the port of Kasab to move goods between Oman and the Iranian coast. The result is a logistical nightmare. The world's largest, most vulnerable vessels are legally required to sail through a narrow, crowded environment controlled by a hostile regional power. Iran frequently leverages this vulnerability for political leverage. This shadow war involves routine harassment, ranging from the boarding of the Maersk Tigris to the more recent seizure of the container ship MSC Ares. These incidents have a history of spiraling into open conflict. During the 1980s tanker war, both sides targeted commercial shipping, and Iran began making active preparations to mine the strait's navigation channels. Massive disruptions usually trigger a heavy U.S. military response. In 1988, the U.S. launched Operation Praying Mantis, a retaliatory strike that destroyed a significant portion of Iran's naval capabilities in a single day. This high-tension environment can lead to tragic errors. In 1988, the cruiser USS Vincennes mistakenly identified an Iranian civilian airliner as a hostile jet, shooting down Iran Air Flight 655 and killing everyone on board. This historical pattern of escalation points toward a catastrophic scenario often modeled by military strategists, a total blockade. In a projected 2026 crisis, Iran officially declares the strait closed, vowing to set fire to any ship that enters the waterway. Because the stakes are so high, even a hypothetical blockade forces a massive military mobilization. Any threat to this 21-mile gap inevitably escalates into a direct clash between regional forces and global superpowers. On paper, the West appears more resilient today than in decades past. But if the U.S. is finally energy independent, why does a conflict in a distant strait still pose a fundamental threat to the American economy? This data shows a massive disproportion in where that oil actually goes. China currently buys 89% of Iran's total oil exports, making them the primary consumer of the energy flowing through the strait. However, oil is a global commodity. If Asian markets lose their supply, they will begin bidding on oil from other regions, driving up prices everywhere. True energy independence is an illusion because a price spike in one corner of the world eventually hits every gas station on Earth. Macroeconomic models project an immediate $50 per barrel spike in crude. That shock triggers global inflation, as rising transport and power costs drag up prices for food and electronics. The final result is a severe contraction in global GDP growth, halting the economic momentum of entire nations. We have spent decades engineering more efficient engines and more resilient domestic supply chains to minimize our reliance on the Middle East. But you cannot out-engineer geography. Because of the way the land is shaped and where the resources sit, these 21 miles of water remain the inescapable choke point of the global economy.